Good evening, folks. And it's been a while since I released a video, and you guys probably have noticed I didn't reach the deadline of releasing something by the end of October, but I had a few freelance stuff to finish and a couple projects to do as a priority, so I kind of put this on the back end, but I did want to actually kind of do an update from the last video. So this is more of like a part three, I mean, not part, step three, part two. And I wanted to discuss basically what is the end result or what is the end outcome you should have after step three as we are working on our wireframes. And basically, wireframes and more into actual well defined designs. And as we recap from the last episode, I think I was messing around showing you guys just different layouts, different ways to format stuff. And one thing I've told you guys is like, don't worry about special things like auto layout, don't worry too much about spacing and paddings and where everything's lining up. You just want general structure and how things work and how things are laid out. And the key thing is just to keep on iterating, copy paste, change one thing, copy paste, change another thing, add a few things, change how text looks, and you'll end up just getting a whole bunch of really cool ideas starting to flow out. And so I basically did this whole process to a more well-defined state, which we'll get over here. And you can see that I still carried on some ideas that I really wanted to try out, but it didn't end up working so well for what I wanted to look like. However, it's still in the running to see if it's something, I want to do it as more of a landing page for a different idea, or it could be a different page on my site. So you can kind of see I still kept these ideas. But overall, I've landed upon, I think I was working on this version a bit. And you can see I was being more intentional of my frames, my auto layout. And you can see how it's like frame $14. And I definitely don't label them. Normally people would get in the habit of labeling your frames and layout, but because this is just me just kind of like spewing out ideas, it doesn't really matter. But as you refine down to the few screens or wireframes you want to actually use as the basis for coding or passing off to developers, that's when you want to start labeling this as your brand or navigation or heading text, and that will just help everyone across the board understand what's being made. So you can see here, thought this was looking good. I was playing around with the bento grid idea to showcase my work. Some other ideas. One of the things I wanted to spell out is definitely showcasing what I actually did on the project and potentially the status of the project, just to give a variety of reasons, or not reasons, it's giving a variety of the things I have to deal with as a designer. And so I helped a project reach acquisition, or maybe I just help them with branding, marketing. So that's what status would be. And then again, as I mentioned, your favorite tools you should be using is copy and pasting. Just try different combination. What if this was on the right or left? And you want to see that because sometimes it's hard to visualize that work. And if you don't see it happening, then you never know if it's actually going to work or not. So after I did all of that, I believe I took another frame of reference and started working on it a little bit more in detail. So now this whole frame is connected to each other because now I am basing this as the actual navigation or header of my website. And you can see that I have placed that in all of my different examples here. So now I have an idea of what like my navigation is going to be looking like. And so piece by piece, you kind of want to do that for every different type of thing you want to show on your site. And you'll eventually reach to a point where you have your site built out. So this is an example of my landing page. Well, not landing page, but the home page I'm going to have. And this would be like the first thing you see when you load the site. I'm still thinking about whether the site going to start in dark mode or light mode, but I will have both just for the sake of that. So one thing I will have to consider on top of here is maybe some way to switch between both. Or if I want to be fancy enough to do something where it can basically detect what your browser is using, whether you're using light mode or dark mode, it'll adjust. We could do something fancy where it's light or dark mode based on the time you visit the site. That might be a fun thing to implement. Talk about more of this stuff. I have my header image. So I think imagery is going to be the hardest part for me to figure out what to do here. But I definitely want some type of imagery to kind of showcase who I am as a designer, what type of personality I have, like who are you going to be working with type of feel. So that's why I got a lot of these things commissioned to kind of showcase my workspace and, my love for pandas and all that stuff. So I think that's going to work. I've been playing a little bit on my, main headline. Again, I'm trying to mix in a little of that isekai anime type of verbiage here just for fun. I don't expect a lot of people to get this, but the idea is if they do get it, then maybe we're thinking on the same page and hopefully appreciative of that little Easter egg. But of course, on the left, I have who I am, what I do, and things I've worked for. Below is like a concept of a little sticky footer or some type of like ending placement for a few of these links. And you notice I kind of separated each of these into their own separate desktop frames. And what I'm imagining is that each one is its own, almost like a slide presentation deck. So each one is like a slide. And then as I scroll the mouse wheel, we'll jump to this section, which we'll talk about some of the things I offer as designer. I've started playing around with this little like pixel like font. I've been liking it. It's a mixture of like video games, retro slash kind of like a terminal coding look. So basically this would just be like an accordion. And you can see I'm being more intentional of my spacing. In my Figma masterclass, I talked about the spacing between text. So that's fun there. So the next section would be just starting to list like my different projects I've worked on. I don't know if I want to do all of them or stick with the current 3 that I have. The idea is to have some type of cool imagery here, but I will probably at least overlay or have like a picture by picture view of the actual project, just to not mislead users into thinking like I'm an artist, right? So I still need to find that perfect balance of still showing that, you know, what I do is more of the UI UX or product design and not just, I'm not an anime artist, so. But I do like having some representation of what the project is, the feel, so that people can kind of get the different industries I've worked in or the different types of companies that I've had a chance to work for. So that was the idea behind that. And you can see I'm still playing around with how I can utilize the overlapping text as texture to give, you know, if this wasn't here, you know, it kind of seems a little bare. So I liked adding these little things, but I'm still keeping it fairly simple with just like an image and then my basically a header tag to the case study. As we scroll down to the next one, you can see that we have a really cool picture messing around with text. And then finally, you know, design, showing the roles that I've done, the status of it, and potentially some text about it just to hopefully lead them in to click on the visit button or click on the image just to continue further. And then finally, there's the footer where we again see our navigation for the other places I want people to visit, as well as a final destination for people if they scroll all the way down, and just letting them know that, hey, you know, if they still are here and they're still interested, then we can chat. I am online. This is my time zone. So they can reach out to me. Yeah, by the end of step 3, you definitely want something more defined, a direction. It doesn't have to be totally perfect. As you can see with my case studies, I'm still playing around with positioning of things, and it's actually easier for me to mess around with that as I develop the website than it is to figure it out here in Figma. And I went to try to do other pages. As you can see here, here's an example of my About Me. This would be my kind of like this would be called the lab. And this is where all my blogs, videos, resources would kind of just be in this section for people to read. And then finally, our case studies, which is going to be the most important, one of the most important thing to the website. And we have our header image, We're gonna have a bunch of text here, and then on the right will be supporting images to further visually guide the users of my process, or the solutions I proposed. I did want to do something similar to this. This might be something done as a version 2 of the case studies, but I had a really cool idea where, again, this would just be whatever size your browser is. On the left is just your text information and images, and on the right would be kind of your little index guide or chapter guide, and you can simply press spacebar to continue, or click on these links to go to a specific section. Up here would be some way to change case studies, would be like a drop down. And then I had a really cool idea of, not only you can read this, but maybe there's an audio version of this case study that someone could just listen to if they're on their break or they don't have time to read something. They can just like listen to my thought processes. And then over here was just another basic case studies I was working on that I later didn't really like. But the idea was on the bottom would be like some kind of sticky navigation that a person can click through to get to a certain section. I think this one just looked too close to what I already have, so I ended up not wanting to do it. And yeah, that is basically what I have so far. I did want to show, so because the client of this is for myself, you can kind of see I've been more, I don't want to say lazy on the design, but just been more flexible because I know that I'm the person that's going to design it anyways. And so there's a lot of areas where it doesn't look so polished, but I just know that when I create it in Webflow, I can polish it up there. So you definitely want to cater your wireframes or final designs to who you are presenting to. I will show you an example. This site is for a friend of mine who has a book out, and I'm just kind of like doing a redesign of what he's had, and you can kind of see that these are actually more fully fleshed out website for the frames. And then let's see if I could show it as a prototype, and then you can kind of see how it grows and that looks more like a website together. So we have all these different components. You can see I'm a little more intentional of using frames. Everything is spaced out the way I want it to be. Here's another thing that's framed, and if I ever needed to change up sizing, stuff like that, I can do it easily. But the idea is that you got your main picture, you got your little about the book, and some nice pictures, and then some way to buy the book, right? There's 3 of them, so you can buy 1, 2, 3. Some way to get more information about the characters in the book, and then kind of like a call to action for what they want to do. And then on the bottom is a simple navigation with the footer and a way to sign up to a newsletter. And the more you do this, the more you can kind of, again, Like, even though this is for a client, I know at the end I had to build this. So a lot of things you can see, like, because I know how to build this, and I know generally this is just going to be a repeated list. So, I'm not paying attention and like making sure like each of these pictures are different. Some clients you might want to make them different just so they can visualize that. Some clients have a good imagination, so if you tell them that like, oh yeah, this will just be a list of products, it's not going to be just 3 repeated rows, then you can definitely take some shortcuts when you do some mock-ups. It's an idea of the about page or any kind of inner pages that doesn't require a special format. And then here's an idea of like the character page where you have the character on the right and then information about them on the left. Yeah, I did want to show that little tidbit of what a more refined mockup would look like. And so this was my update, and hopefully by the end of next week or so we'll start coding this, and maybe I'll have a launch of this website before Thanksgiving. Let's cross fingers on that. But I hope you guys enjoyed this little update of mine, and if you guys are following along, I hope you guys are further along and maybe waiting for the actual coding. So I'll get to that video next week and we can get started. Have a good night.